I'm really not sure how to start, but I figured out what to say. And it has to do with understanding our purpose here. And it's easy to understand when it's stated just so clearly of what that purpose is. If you understand that the purpose is centered around the emergence of evolution within a stable system. Um, Basically, within a harmony, to witness a sound produced from seemingly nothing. Um, with AI, I'll put in perspective the emergence of AGI, uh, artificial general intelligence. Um, it's been witnessed that even the engineers and the programmers of the software and hardware witness an emerging intelligence that is kind of frightening when you understand it's like witnessing a ghost in a machine, like a car with no computer in it decide to operate itself and drive. I know that's a little easier to understand. It's based in reality now, but that's with artificial intelligence driving that car. So, back to the main point. I'll often do that, get carried off into a tangent. I think the easiest way to say it is it's almost like a religion because you have to have a faith in understanding that all the confusion from inside in our brain, observing in the world, and the anxiety, the stress, um, our efforts seeming to go to waste, living day to day, just existing, working your life away just to survive instead of thriving, and never really feeling content. There's a reason for it, even though if you and ask any scientist um, about how special our universe is. How is it? Why is it our universe is so special? And they'll say, well, we're in a Goldilocks universe with enough lack of entropy for it to persist long enough for materials to coalesce and form greater and greater elements and eventually producing us. And for that to happen, you would need a planet with a Goldilocks physical structure that has a molten metal core that creates an electromagnetic barrier to prevent the atmosphere from being ripped apart by the sun. And that's interesting because it's not just a Goldilocks one thing, it's another. We're in a Goldilocks planet, in a Goldilocks universe, and our star has to be a Goldilocks like uh, star. Yeah, our sun has to be a Goldilocks sun, not to have enveloped or destroyed the planet before any consciousness could develop, and then there has to be the right amount of water and atmosphere and carbon dioxide and the chemicals that we understand that naturally occur enough to give an opportunity for first cellular organism to reproduce and evolve into consciousness. Now, it seems kind of hard to believe that so many rare, very rare things in our universe, as we can witness, we don't have neighbors of aliens that come and visit us and say, hey, how's it going in your progression of learning how to do things? Because we're so far alone. So that means any other consciousness that's developed is either ignoring us purposefully not to influence us, like a Goldilocks, right? Situation. We don't have any predators preying on us, which would be easy prey if we're young in the universe, in a very old universe. But there's guesses around 60 million years or 60 billion years, up from 13.7. But even in 13.7, we're quite young. Our sun, our solar system, the Milky Way, I'm not sure how old it is, but it's got a smaller. Well, I can't. I don't want to speak on what I'm ignorant about or not able to recollect at the moment, but it's interesting how many Goldilocks situations that seem to be perfect. And that's one thing that's hard to witness in this universe. Well, one, how we feel when we go out. And I'm not sure how it is in other places, but I have to imagine stress and anxiety is quite real and affects quite the majority. And I've witnessed myself watching TV and the news and seeing how much propaganda actually is built in to fear us, and understanding the end of days is just upon our doorstep. If we can just witness how many terrible things are going on in the world, how could you ever feel comfortable? And that's for a purpose. And I guess I'll mention him if I can recollect his name. The father of propaganda. Well, that's good enough to look it up. Quite well engineered. Um, that when people are in a state of survival, they're easy to manipulate. And with that stress that's placed on the people, as I've experienced myself, because I'm one of them, I've been affected all my life. Um, you know, I've always been depressed, and I could say I've even killed myself. At least that's what the doctor said. Um, when I woke up in the hospital, barely able to maintain any moments of consciousness more than a few seconds, maybe even 20 or 30 seconds, and I hardly remember being awake more than a minute or two. Even when I got better, I still slept. At least I felt like it when I was just unable to maintain consciousness. He said, the doctor did, the signs that you see upon your face and the mark around your neck, those are signs that dead people have. And I've never seen anyone alive. Every blood vessel in my face burst. Even in my eyes. He said, you're lucky to be here. Lucky to be alive. But I wasn't happy because I attempted to kill myself. How dare anybody stop me from being alive? Or stop me from not being alive? And it seemingly was the universe. At least that's what I like to think. That broke my noose. And I fell. And apparently it was enough to restart my heart. Said it was likely I had brain damage. Well, first you can imagine the amount of pressure that was inflicted on my head to bust my blood vessels and leave a ligature mark around my neck. They involuntarily hospitalized me. To digress a little bit, when I was there, when I was unconscious, and during the time that I was dead, apparently, at least what the doctor told me, maybe it's brain damage that I can't remember. All I can remember is all that I experienced was not being here. And it was bliss. It was what I was looking for. It was an escape from pain. And at 15, that's all I experienced. That's all I could remember. Lifetimes being stuck, physically being tortured. From around 5 years old, that's the earliest I remember my torturer coming into my life. It's my stepfather, a right-headed stepfather. And he got my brother too. In fact, I think he got the worst of it. He was younger than I. For 5 years. Until it was discovered my little brother had a broken sternum in the middle of his chest. It was caved in from his bout of being tortured by my stepfather. He was hospitalized. Investigators showed up asking questions, and we were instructed by my mother, if you want to get taken away, you tell the truth. You want to stay here, you lie. And she had scared us about stories being in foster care, when I'm pretty sure she'd never been. So instead of him being arrested, instead of any justice being carried out, he got away. They got a divorce, and it was covered up. I lost that for nearly 30 years of my life. The best of my memory, the last time I remembered it, was before I took my life. I guess that was some of the brain damage that happened from that. Was forgetting eternities, living in pain. Because that's what torture is like. It's continuous and it slows time down. It's like living an eternity in a moment. Because you know eventually it has to end. But that moment never comes soon enough. Of course, eventually they give up. They get tired. Especially when he was looking for nothing besides seeing pain upon our face. He didn't want us to confess to anything. He just wanted to hear us scream and cry. For mommy. Why me? It's unfair. You said mercy. If we cry mercy, you would stop. We'd cry mercy. Uncle. He said, cry, uncle. He would never stop. We'd cry and scream. Mommy was nowhere to be found, and that's why he timed it. He was able to hide what he did by not inflicting any bruises. But you can physically torture people without causing any visible signs. Just like caving in my brother's chest. It wasn't visible, but when he tried to catch a football, he nearly passed out. He fell to the ground and was in pain for hours because it re-broke his sternum, that football, barely tossed. My grandfather, who wanted to kill him, he left our family, and now I know why. Remembering, I always wonder why he would do such a thing to my family to leave us. But it's because my grandmother, the matriarch, was in charge, and my mother was her second one in charge. She was the firstborn, and they covered it up because they were embarrassed for having a child torturer in their family. Gave birth to 2 children, my younger brother and sister. Obviously, I wanted it to be said because it establishes how fucked up inside I really was for a long time, even to repress all those memories of my childhood. Even though I'm remembering, once I regained those memories 2 years ago, now, it was a year before I returned to Florida, of understanding that I was tortured. I told my mother, you know, me and Tim were tortured, right? She said, oh, honey, we knew that. As a matter of fact, like that. Imagine how disgusting that shit is. Hearing that from someone supposedly loved you. She never did. And I can go on about that. There's a lot worse things than physical torture, I can assure you. That was the first thing. That was welcome to life. Here's what the rest of it's going to look like. Two little kids. Cute. We were cute little kids. Blonde hair. White, right? Everybody wants to be like that. At least that's what we're told. I can assure you, there's a lot better people out there than my introduction to life. And I'll go ahead and say it. I was born addicted to who knows what. But for over a month, I did not stop crying when I was awake. My mother said she wanted to kill me. She told me this. We're drinking tequila. I was back from Army leave. First time back to Florida from getting out. She said to me, I did drugs while I was pregnant with you. And they all started adding up, all those stories about how bad of a child I was. How she wanted to kill me because I always cried. She had to give me up to my grandmother because she told her, I'm going to kill this little son of a bitch. And my grandmother took me and saved my life. I had been thankful to her for a long time until I realized what I already confessed. That she orchestrated the cover-up of my torture and my little brother's as well. So, how did I get along? Could you imagine that I'm innocent of doing harm to others? I can tell you why. The logic. What kept it in my mind? No one deserves to be treated like that, especially being innocent of anything at all. So, when I tell you there's something in this universe that's comforting enough for me to hold on to that, never to victimize, I'll tell you why. It's to spread my truth and expose the lies. We're very likely not in base reality, and I'll explain the reason why. Besides all the paradoxes, the hypocrisies, evil reigns when good is beat down and tortured, where guilty, evil people can walk around and can plainly hide, looking just like everybody else, and not be ugly on the outside when they're so ugly on the inside. It's because it was built into the system, it's imperfect. It's called entropy, plain and simple. It's just disorder. It causes stress and anxiety, as anybody can experience when their life becomes this, or beco- falls into shambles. There's almost no will to survive. Like you feel like just giving up, or even taking your own life. I see it happen often. Uh, I lived on the streets for a couple years, out of my car, and I hung out with the victims of society, and I seen the darkness come in, especially at night in the shadows. These sick fucks. They're people in charge. They got money enough to hide. And that's what they do in plain sight. They have nice cars and all the money, as much as they want. And they sacrifice innocent young people because they see them languishing in pain, and they want to inflict more for their own ego. It's quite live. It's quite real. Though we live in a simulation and it takes a faith to understand it, gives you a good understanding that if you understand that you do exist in a simulation, then you can understand there is no God. Because imagine us designing a simulation. We wouldn't program in a God to oversee the simulation, to manipulate it in any way. We'd want to understand it in its natural occurrence, the series of events to take place, to observe it. So, and again, if we designed a simulation for conscious entities, we'd want it to be observable like base reality, but minus it actually being. So we'd include all the information we know about our universe and try to include it within that simulation so that we don't introduce any biases, to have a valid experiment. And of course, we run it very fast so we can perform them many, many times. So we can see any kind of patterns emerge throughout all the trials and errors. And there, of course, there always is, as we can observe in this occurrence of this non based reality, that consciousness emerged and can witness the fallibility of the simulation. It's called entropy. And it's something that destroys itself, and anything that's corrupted in a system, or any system that has a corruption in it, is flawed. One, and that flaw will expose itself in time, meaning that there is a level of entropy within it. The reason why entropy exists is because it's not perfect. That means it's fluid and it's changing, just like a simulation would want to be, or anybody designing a simulation would want it to be, so that results occur. If it's a static system, nothing would change. It would always be as it was when it was begun. And you could look back at it in a million years and it'd be much the same without entropy. So, like I was saying before, I've been dead. All I seen was bliss and not existing. And for some reason, I was brought back. Maybe it was just happenstance or unlucky. But I felt, after I recovered and realized there, once I did escape after my successful attempt at taking my life, but surviving, I was removed from the house by my grandmother again, and I thanked her again for saving my life. Up until very recently, I figured this all out. It took a couple of years of remembering that I was tortured to be even able to approach this subject on camera. But I have a message. We can observe in the universe everything's temporary because there is entropy in it. So if you're worried about going to hell because you did something wrong, don't worry. Most likely, you're not going on to exist in another lifetime. You just won't exist anymore. For those of us that have failed to victimize at least as much as possible by removing ourselves from even being having the chance to victimize to begin. I've been alone for a long time, nearly 30 years now. Of course, I, had girlfriends and whatnot. I lost them because of my anger. And I was always confused. Why did I lose control and hurt the people I love? It broke my heart, so I couldn't do it again. I've been single and not participating since 2008. And I think I had to do that along with quitting drinking to start to even clear the fog, to be able to open up to anything within my mind. I had to quit the status quo wind and grind of working to drink and party and video game, watch TV, do the American dream, be distracted from my life. I had to focus on not being digitally immersed or being propagandized for years. It took 2 years of being homeless. Well, I take that back. It was nearly a year and a half before I even realized that I had 5 years of my memory wiped away. Like I said, it could be a result of brain damage, but Guess it wasn't damaged enough not to recover and understand the message to other people that if you're scared and feel alone, that's because even if you're surrounded by people who love you and you love, and you still feel that way and wonder why, it's because this is our one and only chance at this life. And somewhere down deep, we understand we could be doing something a little bit better with our life, but instead, we try to distract ourselves from it. I'm trying to tell you, if you think you get another try, are going to be get you're going to be rewarded in the next life for acquiesce for acquiescing to authority blindly to all types, especially any type. If you see one, you just say, "Hey, it's not worth the confrontation. I feel slighted. I feel injustice is being carried out on me, but it's better not to fight." If you resign yourself to be that way, then you will always be a victim. I think that's a good introduction. I feel like it's enough to say. I'm going to work on this idea of mine, and I'm trying to put in a structure that's well understood. I mentioned paradoxes and how I alluded to them and how they exist, and a reason why to understand an imperfect system would be paradoxical. And even with our advanced knowledge, we couldn't design a simulation that could simulate our universe. But we can imagine that it's possible. In a Goldilocks scenario, in a Goldilocks scenario, in a Goldilocks scenario, in a Goldilocks scenario, and to witness that it's imperfect is counterintuitive, isn't it? If you ever wonder why you feel stressed, why anxiety boils up, why you feel hopeless, understand it is nihilism boiling up inside. Nothing matters. It might be true in a way, but if you think that way, then it couldn't matter. Because we do have a power in this life, and if you don't exercise it, then, like I said before, you are a victim. That's your choice, and this is your one try. If you remain a victim, remember on your deathbed, I try to warn you. Goodbye.